You can go.
Sure, thank you so much, Have. So, my name is Fred Kujo Adade, a Ghanaian. Uh, I've served in Thailand for 8 years as a missionary there, working as a missionary with other churches. And I'm back here in the UK with my family and then studying for my PhD. So, I've got a master's in theology and leadership from the University of Roehampton here in the UK, and a master's of theology from Fuller Theological Seminary in the USA, and then a PhD here with Roehampton continues. So this afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are, I'm going to be speaking today to you on shrine, and how that intersects African traditional practice and religion. Uh, Now, before I start, or before we go deeper into the concept or the thinking of shrine. Uh, I'm guided by a philosophical principle that I always share with my students. Now, it's based on three foundations that you learn, you unlearn, and you relearn. Now, these three philosophical foundations are also based on the fact that you're born with a belief system. And this belief system, over time, you begin to grow and transition into the challenges of this world. And so, when you face these challenges of this world, you're forced to rethink some of these beliefs. And so, in rethinking some of these beliefs, you begin to unlearn what you have learned about yourself. And also, in that becomes the reality of life that you're faced with. And as you're faced with this reality, you're beginning to relearn anew. And so, relearning anew, what that means is that you're beginning to generate your own truth. And this is what goes with you. So, these three philosophical foundations are very important. You learn, you unlearn, and relearn. And in a sense, you have your belief systems, you have what uh, the realities that confronts you, and then that becomes your truth. So that being said, I've always given my students a disclaimer, and that disclaimer is that my truth is not your truth, but my truth can guide you to know your truth, which is very important. So my truth is not your truth, but your truth, my truth can guide you to get to your own truth. So we're going to be talking today on shrine, or the concept or the idea or thinking of shrine. Uh, is this working? So can you see my screen? Sure. Good. Good. So, and for that matter, we're going to look at Ghana as the focus or the context from which we're looking at shrine from. And we're going to use the case study of Nogokpo, for which I am a native. This Ewe cosmology, which of course I am a native of, which is very important. Now, the idea of shrine as a conceptual category has generated a lot of constructed thinking over time. It has generated a lot of constructed, so it's generated theological construct, social construct, religious construct, cultural construct, and so many other thinking. And so the relevance or the importance of shrine begins to diminish in so many other contexts because of all these constructs around it. And so, for us to be able to understand what shrine means, we have to look at the etymology of the word itself, the origin of the word, that is the first usage of the word, and what it means in that context. And then we can be able to draw it down and then integrate that or intersect that within our cosmologies or mythologies around our thinking. Then we'll look at the Nogokpo as a case study, as I've mentioned, and then we'll look at the Eber cosmology, which is also very important, connoting the idea of shrine, and also we now break it down to African theology versus Christian theology, and how that plays a very important role in understanding what shrine means in that sense. Now, so before we go into that, so my argument here is that, so my own argument is that if shrine is a place for ritual practice, which has evolved over time as a construct, then its significance can be de-identified in a context given its theological relevance. I don't know if I have to say that again. So my own argument is that if shrine is a place for ritual practice, which has evolved over time as a construct, then its significance can be de-identified in a context given its theological relevance. So I'm going to pause here quickly to just interact with you for a minute. So in your own case, or in your own engagements over a period of time, what do you think shrine is, or what has been your thoughts of shrine when you hear that thinking, or what's that idea or that concept of shrine, whatever you want to call it? What has been your thinking all over from the very beginning of the thought of that word, or when you hear that? So if you just want to speak, just please mention your name, and then you can tell us.
I'm Angel, and I think of just a place to go and worship. Maybe paying homage to, could be an idol or something like that.
So what context are you speaking from?
What context am I speaking from?
Yes.
Um,
Where are you from? And
oh. So I'm American, but I live here in the UK right now.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good.
That's what I would think of.
Good. That's Angel. Edupong, any thinking growing up in a Ghanaian context?
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Ghana, whether you were born into Christian home or not, there is a clear dichotomy between the various religions, say church, mosque, and a shrine. And from that perspective, when you hear church, it's referred to the Christian. When you hear mosque, it refers to the Islam. When you hear shrine, then it goes to the fetish or African religion, what in my country call abosom, that is the gods. So you don't need to belong to any of them before you understand. The moment you hear church, whether it's Presbyterian, whether it's Methodist, whether it's charismatic, it's church means Christianity. Shrine simply means God, African religion, fetish, and all those things. So yes, from my upbringing, that is my understanding of shrine.
So is there any particular connotation that goes with that thinking of shrine in that context?
Yes, and that connotation is what people go and do over there, and that could include somebody who is unwell and they are going there, somebody who is going to ask something about something that has happened, misfortune that has happened, or you are going there to curse somebody, or you are going there to find out a missing something. You're going to, who killed this person? Let's go to the shrine and find out somebody has stolen something. And in our even homes where something has happened, you call the name of the shrine to invoke either fear or curse upon somebody. Of course, nobody will call the name of the church to instill fear or anything. But the moment you mention shrine, then it means that either somebody is dead, we are going to find out who killed the person there, or I'm going to search for this and or going to curse you over there. And that is what goes with the name shrine.
Thank you so much. Yes, yeah, Ojo.
Yes, my name is Zacchaeus from Nigeria. Yes, I think my own understanding of shrine is similar to him until this almost the same way, the same I understandable. When I got to the UK here, I got to understand that some of their churches they call it shrine. I was shocked when I heard that because it was strange to me. Even though I never bothered to ask questions all this while, I was like, shrine in the church. So I couldn't really comprehend it. Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's very interesting. Yes, Paul.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Paul Tester. I'm from the UK, but I live in Peru here in Latin America. And shrine here, just building on what Zacchaeus just said, was a shrine has a very it's spoken about in a kind of the Roman Catholic sense, as a place of particular significance for veneration. I'll go for that rather than worship. So for veneration, it's something that would be very issue. People would distance themselves from that as evangelical Christians. They would run away from that very quickly. But because of the fear, if you like, of we were talking this morning about syncretism, because they see it as building on the past. And on that adaptation of indigenous religions and the concerns around that. And so that's the sort of background I see the word shrine being used of here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very interesting. Thank you so much. Any more?
I'd be happy to jump in.
Sure.
So I'm Rosie Hopley. I'm based in the UK. Just to give you some context, I was actually raised as a Catholic. And then converted to charismatic Christianity. So for me, the word shrine, it holds the meaning of a place that has a special resonance. It perhaps is a symbolic place where it points to an encounter with God or a deity, or remembering something God or that his spirit has done for us, or where there have been recorded miracles, where people come and make their petitions. And it can also be a shrine to intermediaries such as saints in the Catholic tradition.
Very important. Thank you so much. Angelina, context?
So Angelina, I'm just outside Cambridge in England. As for me, the word shrine is again a place where they do miracles. So I'm glad to be in this class so I can unlearn what I learned, apparently.
Sure. Anybody else? Rachel? Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Sure.
I think shrine to us, it's I'm Rachel from Kenya in Africa.
Good.
And I'm from a Pentecostal background. And to us, shrine in one way or another means it's a place where the rituals and sacrifices are done. And much more, it's associated with witchcraft. So I think I'm also here to unlearn what I have learned, and I'm getting to learn a lot.
Okay, very much so. So I've not prepared any paper to be reading out, so it's going to be very discussive, so very interactive, if that is okay. So very much so. So if you listen very carefully to all the submissions given so far, you would notice that there's been these constructs around it. For instance, when you listen to Ojo, what Ojo said, Ojo did not really understand the idea of shrine from a very different context, but he knew shrine was connotated with the African traditional practices that relents or that is withdrawn from anything that has to do with God. That was for his from his understanding. Now, if you also listen to what quickly, let me see. If you also listen to what just a minute. If you also listen to what Charles also mentioned from the Ghanaian contest, he also identified that if you look at shrine in terms of how that relates to the people in Ghana, or socially or culturally or religiously, you'd also understand that there's a religious, social, and cultural construct around the idea of shrine. That a church sees shrine as a place where has nothing to do with them as a religious sect. And so there's that distinctive differences between them, where it is difficult for the church to also understand that this place is a place of worship where you can understand and learn from and integrate their thinking into society and broadly address issues of the society. And so we'll look at the etymology of shrine itself for us to be able to understand what shrine means and begin to deconstruct, our thinking of shrine from the African perspective, because we're looking at this from the African traditional practice. And so if you look at, so when I went to the dictionary, I really wanted to understand the etymology, meaning that the first usage of the word and how the people related to the word and how what it meant at the point of or its origin. So when you look at the Old English, it says it's a chest of books. It's a chest of books. So when you bring it down, it says it's a case of relics or a box for keeping papers. Now, what is also very important here is that this has nothing or relation to do with any practice or thinking or religious association at the time. But if you look at the modern use of the word shrine itself, it says that it's a holy or sacred place dedicated to a specific deity or ancestor or hero or master, similar figure or respected, at which said figure is venerated and worshipped. And like Ojo mentioned, shrine has become a very constructed term that it is difficult to associate with or de-identify the concept in whatever form you want to look at it. And so our process now is to be able to look at these definitions or the meaning that is connotated or identified with shrine and begin to deconstruct our own thinking in a sense. So for the African traditional practice, we, in a sense, are animists. And we believe in the physical world and the spiritual world. So if shrine from the word or from the original thinking is a place or a chest of books or a place where we keep knowledge, where a certain kind of knowledge, not just any knowledge, but a sacred knowledge that we can encounter both the physical and the spiritual world we live in, where we can speak and hear answers or have response, then there is no that much difference or distinction between a church as a place of worship where you go to speak to a divine force, to interact between the physical and the spiritual, and a shrine as in the religious context. I don't know if I'm making sense. So if there's not that much distinction between these two, then what then is a shrine in that thinking, in this modern thinking? How then do we begin to deconstruct and create that interface between the church and our traditional practices? So we take, now having laid this foundation on what shrine means, we take the case study of Nogokpo. Now Nogokpo is in Ghana, and it's one of the revered, if not the most, one of the revered shrines in Ghana. Now it's very revered because anytime you go there to consult or to tap into this spiritual and physical realm experience, the results are very fast. And one of the things you also notice there is that it is a place to seek truth, not just justice, which is also very important when you relate this to the church. Now, I give you a bit of a history of Nogokpo. Now, Nogokpo was a shrine founded by Togbi Saba, and is noted for its high spiritual powers that governs the land and gives instant justice. Now, Togbi Saba settled with his gods in a community called Agbozume. Now, after some time, Togbi Saba decided to relocate. And so he relocated with his gods. Now, the word itself is not Nogokpo, but the word has developed and people have simplified it to call it Nogokpo. But the word itself is Nogokpo. That is the meaning of the word. Nogokpo. That's the. So when you translate that, that's an Ewe word. So when you translate that word, it means, would you stay in peace? When you translate it into English, and the literal meaning is, would you stay in peace? So that is the name of the place. So when the founder or the chief priest of Nogokpo relocated to his new community, he mentioned that anybody coming here or where he's resettled would have to stay in peace with him. And so that was how the community began in that context. It started in the 1990s. Oh, sorry, in the early 1900s. Now, so the community has evolved over time, and Nogokpo had become so powerful over time and has become the moral guide of the community, serving them in every purpose. Now, I remember very well growing up in the Volta region that it is very, very, very much so the case that it is difficult for you as a young man growing up to take something from somebody that does not belong to you. Now, growing up also, it is also, you will notice very much that it is difficult for you to hear of so much moral ills in a society because of the concept of Nogokpo that have become the moral principle of the community. So what it is that just the mere word or the sheer hearing the mere name of Nogokpo, it sends shivers down your spines. So it's difficult for you to commit any moral ills in the society. Now, what happens is that when you commit a moral ill in the society, or let's say you steal from somebody in the community, now that aggrieved person decides, when that aggrieved person decides to take you to that shrine, Nogokpo, now the chief priest will be consulted. And when the chief priest is consulted, the chief priest would then ask you to go back to your community and then announce to the community. Now, the chief priest will give you a specific date and tell the people within your community where whatever has been stolen from, that you're giving them up to a week or two. That so whoever comes there to steal from you, whoever has heard of it or has any foreknowledge of this, should come back and report to you, or they go to the chief priest and report of this item being stolen. And so if that is not done, if you go then to report, send a message back to the community, and then the report is not adhered to, or nobody comes up, what it means is that now there in Nogokpo they have the god of thunder, the god of lightning, and the god of rain. So these are the four elements of destruction, or the gods that punish whoever that's stolen from, or whoever commits any moral ill within the Volta region at the time. And so if you go back and then you report to the fetish priest that this period has passed or has elapsed and nothing has happened, nobody has come to tell you that they were responsible for this, the chief priest will now send the gongo beater to the town the second time. This time around, the gongo beater will now announce and give a specific date for which either the thunder or lightning or rain god will strike. And believe you me, when the time has elapsed and nobody comes up or owns up to that particular crime, thunder will strike and the person will die. And it is not just the person dying, the person dies with his family. And so any member of your family is or will be punished by this sin or act of sin that you've committed. And so this has been the ethics or the principles that have guided Nogokpo all this time. So you would notice that Nogokpo is not just a place for punishing people who have done wrong, but it's also a place for correcting wrongs in society. And one thing I'll have to mention is that now, in case you go there to report to the community or make an announcement to the community, and the person owns up, then the person is invited to the shrine, and the person is asked to pay or atone for peace. And so the person is charged with certain things, and then the person has to atone for peace to appease the gods. Now, in any case or in any event that is the first instance where you did not come to report and your people continue dying, your family members continue dying, what also happens is that at any point anybody in the family decides that there's enough of this killing, what then happens is that anybody in the family can go back to the shrine and report these incidents that have happened within the family to the shrine or to the chief priest, and then you're asked to bring a young girl or young female girl to atone for peace for your family. And so that young female now will now serve with the chief priest as a goddess in a sense. And then over the time, she's given to the priest and she serves there for a very long time to come. So this has been the principle with Nogokpo. And one of the things also we have to also understand is that with the ever cosmology or the mythology, it is believed that the fundamental principle is the belief in the existence of human beings and the spirit world. And in doing so, this idea is also found in the concept that there is movement, there's vibration, and there is sound. So when you meet or you go there to Nogokpo, what you would experience are these three elements of creation, which is the fetish priest speaks to the spirit world, and in speaking to the spirit world, the response is that you would speak words that are not within the physical world. And these attributes are very much important for us to understand the idea of, the physical and the spiritual world. So it is believed within the urban cosmology that we have physical names and we have got spiritual names. And so it is these spiritual names that are kept as secrets from the rest of the community. So this is where the idea or the concept of shrine comes in, that it is a place for or reserved for a spiritual knowledge, a hidden knowledge, secrecy that is beyond the physical world. And it is only the chief priest that is custodian to this spiritual realm. And he or she is the only person that can, evoke the spirit world to, take effect or affect the physical world. So this has been the concept of shrine in that sense in Nogokpo over the years. But what we have noticed these days is that it has become very much the issue that it is difficult for people now to become associated with these principles, because it has been demonized and relegated to the background for the fact that it has been attributed so much with punishing the community rather than restoring justice in a sense. So the killing of anybody that does wrong in the society is more of the concentration. That is where the concentration is, rather than the principles or ethical principles that Nogokpo has always, relevated to the people in the community. And so this has affected Nogokpo or the religious practice over the time, which also is very important. Now, how this has also affected our thinking is also very important. Now, growing up also as a Christian, you understand that if you look at the concept of Nogokpo or the principles of Nogokpo, you would understand that ever methodology where justice is served, there is atonement for peace, there is also reconciliation, has a very much similar thinking, or has that resemblance, or that has that intersection or interacting with Christology from both above and below. in a sense. And so if that is the case, because if you look at Nogokpo, for instance, anybody that does wrong and is punished over the time, and if you want to prevent that punishment, you have to atone for peace by bringing a young child or young girl to atone for peace in that community. Can be seen drawing from Christology from above, in a sense. Now, in the Christian sense, or the Christian thinking, or the Christian thought, we believe that God created the world, and at some point we deviated from creation or the moral principles that God created with the universe. And so for God to be able to reconcile us back to himself, he gave what? His son Jesus Christ to atone for peace. And through Jesus Christ, we what? We have life, and life forever. Now, drawing on this cosmology, we are thinking, and the question we are asking is, should we begin to deconstruct the African thinking from its approaches that has generated a constructed thinking around it? And if so, what methodologies should we begin to look at? Are the methodologies that have been proposed over time the right approaches to understanding the African approach to justice, reconciliation, and peace, or ethical principles or moral principles in society? So I would pause here. If you have any question quickly, you can ask, and then we can continue with, yes, because of our time. Sure. Ted.
Oh, sorry.
Is it Teddy? Okay, Teddy.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my question has to do with maybe the last point that you were making. You look at the justice, the reconciliation,
Sure.
all those things that were happening.
Sure.
Even though it's you that I'm asking, but it goes beyond you to maybe other things that we've heard in this lecture.
Yeah.
Will we say maybe the God of the New Testament has made all these shrines to look evil? Now, what I'm saying here is that you are making a comparison from the Christian perspective. Yes, in the Old Testament, when sin is committed, there is a need for atonement. Bring a sheep, bring this for pacification and all those things, which is similar to what goes on in this shrine and many others.
Yeah.
Now we come to the New Testament, and since Christ came, we don't do all those things again. Like we said, Christ is the final sacrifice for God and all those things. Is it not the New Testament Christianity that is making all these shrines look like, oh, they are now gods, because what pertains to this shrine looks like it was existing in the Old Testament, which we can draw a couple of analogy from, where somebody sinned, where somebody needs pacification and all those things. But now all those things are not there. So my point here is that, is it modernization that is making Noguchi look maybe old, look more difficult, look more wicked? Is it modernization that people are now moving away? Or it's more of the New Testament form of Christianity that is making people move away from the shrine? I don't know whether you get the import of my question. I mean, instead of blaming the unpopularity of the shrine or to the fact that, oh, people are modern, people don't go, people have made it to look evil, wouldn't it be rather be more the concept of the New Testament way of justice and atoning and all those things that seems to be totally different from what pertains in the Old Testament, which is also similar to what pertains to the shrine?
That's interesting. So that's what you're just driving at is we should look at the methodological approach to understanding both concepts and drawing that distinction if they intersect in a sense. Now, I'm not sure if what you're suggesting as the modern way of thinking has demonized the ethical and moral principles of of our African thinking and principles. Now, I think if you understood or if you did follow from the beginning, I made a very strong statement that there has been a social, cultural, religious construct around the idea of shrine, and this goes beyond just these components I've mentioned. But the issue is that we've got anthropological thinking in a sense, we've got theological thinking in a sense, or we've got social thinking in a sense. Now, all these approaches to understanding the idea of shrine has been, in a way, integrated to give a certain thinking over time. Don't forget, there's been so much research within the African context on the concept of shrine over time. So, from a theological perspective or a missiological perspective, is it a modern thinking? I would say no. But it has been more of a methodological mishaps or approaches that has integrated over time to giving it a strange position that de-identify or de-emphasize the importance of the moral principles of the moral or ethical principles of shrine over time. And so this is where we have found ourselves in a dilemma. So how do you as a scholar and myself as a scholar begin to look at these approaches and begin to fine-tune or draw the line? Because that is why I started with the etymology of the word itself, shrine. Because the sound, even the sound or the mention of the word itself gives a certain connotation. That is why I mentioned from your own context, very different context. Some churches, the word itself, shrine, is not pagan in context. It is not at all. But a church would not want to associate itself with shrine. But the meaning of shrine is a place where we keep sacred knowledge, where we engage both the physical and the spiritual world. Now, I'm drawing that analogy and making it clear that there is that similarity between Christology from above and below and the mythology of the Nogokpo shrine. It is very important that we begin to look at it broadly. How do we then begin to deconstruct this thinking? If that is the case, that is a modern thinking, how do we begin to deconstruct the case? I don't know if I make any sense to your answer. And it's something you have to keep up, or you have to really begin to work on, so we can have more insights on. Yes, any other?
I think Angel has a hand up.
Yeah, Angel, yeah, Angel.
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling to get past the part where you said that they would bring a young girl to give to the priest, and I really need you to help me with that. So what does that look like?
Okay, so according to the practice, now the young priest or the young girl is given to the the priest, or is given as an atonement for peace, to reconcile the family to the gods. And what it is that it is believed that that young girl now serves as, in a way, a progenitor to the sin, that anytime the priestess looks upon that child, he ceases to consult for any other punishments on the family. And that is the belief there. But as to why they use a female young lad, I am not really sure why they use that. And so this is something I am also going very soon to Ghana to also begin to interact with the priest or the people in the community to understand.
When you say they bring the young girl to the shrine, are you saying they make a sacrifice of her?
No, 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 no. They don't make sacrifice. She serves. She lives there for the rest of her life.
Okay,
So
so she becomes a priestess.
physically? Is she becoming a sex slave?
No, 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 not as in that. Because again, don't forget, if the shrine serves as a place for moral principles, where there are ethics guiding both the physical and the spiritual world,
Right.
it is difficult for that chief priest to act otherwise.
Okay.
I don't know if that is very clear.
So she becomes a resident.
A resident to
sort of young priest, like Samuel happens in the Bible, right?
In the Bible,
goes on to live in the temple, and that's what happens in this case.
And like you said in the Bible, in Jesus Christ is given out as a resident of this world. Yeah.
And yes, she lives in the shrine
for the rest of her life,
and is never married.
Is never married, and she's not married to the priest or anybody. She just serves as a priestess anytime she's old enough to understand some of these things, and then she takes on that role as a priestess in the shrine.
So how many, at any one time, how many girls or women might be at the priest's house?
Not the house, the shrine.
The shrine.
Oh, the shrine.
The shrine. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it depends. It depends, because anytime anybody goes wrong, and so if you want to prevent any child from going there, what it is that the moral principles are there. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. You should not take anybody's item falsely or anything. And so once you go wrong, and the aggrieved party goes to the shrine to lay that complaints, it means that punishment will be meted to whoever has gone wrong, and it runs down to the whole family. So that is also very important. It runs down the whole family, not just one person, until somebody pays the price. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Ojo, did you want to ask anything?
Yeah, I think what I wanted to ask, someone else has already mentioned it. Yeah. Thank you.
So any other questions? Because we've got some few minutes.
We've got 9 minutes to go.
Yeah, we've got 9 minutes to go. Now, so quickly, then we just want to look at African theology versus Christian theology. So how this thinking, so how are we beginning to deconstruct our thinking from the idea of Christology? Should we begin to deconstruct our thinking from the idea of Christology? I'm going to just read quickly for you because of time. Now the quest for a definitive theology only became an academic concern, arguably, in the late 1950s and the 1960s. Now, Nkansa or Pong view this concept function as a tool for regaining identity. They also motivated theologians to begin to reinterpret the Christian faith in terms that reflect this identity so that Africans can understand and relate to the Christian faith as their own. Now, these cultural and social political movements lay the foundation for African theology of indigenization or enculturation and sees the African culture and religion as important source of theological reflection on the Christian faith. At the same period, in the Southern African region, the Black movement contributed to Black theology of liberation, which is the eminence of the liberation theology around the world at the time, around the 1960s thereabout. Now, before the Ecumenical Association of the Third World Theologians in 1976, leading African theologians maintained that the existing theology of the African church at the time was fabricated and actually non-existent. This assertion, as Bediaku maintains, was unmindful of the already existing African theology at the grassroots levels. A further reflection by Mbeti decades later acknowledges and confirms the existence of not only written African theology, but also oral theology ahead of definitive written theology in Africa. So, like we're saying, the African theology or the cosmology of thinking or the mythology has always been in existence. But the problem or the challenge has always been the methodological approach to how African scholars are beginning to deconstruct the African theology from a broader Christian theology. And so this has always been a challenge. So how are we looking at this approach to deconstructing or de-identifying the African approach from the Christological thinking? So this is what I would leave with you for now. So if there's any other contributions or questions, you can share it quickly, and then we discuss that because of our time. I think there are a few questions on the chat. So how does she remain unmarried? That is from Rosie. She remains unmarried. She just stays with the priest. She doesn't bear children, and that is what she does at the shrine. She's just there and serves as a priestess for a long time.
Actually, I mean, you could think of her as a living sacrifice, right?
That's the case. That's mostly the case. And as a reminder for the community also to refrain from any more immoral thinking. Yes.
I mean, I think there's a lot that we need to unpack here.
Yes.
It's unfortunate that we had to squeeze it within an hour.
Yeah.
Maybe you all, please, if you have questions, write them down. Let's pick them up when we meet again in 2 weeks. And the role of the living sacrifice in this case, that young woman, the spiritual significance of that is something that we could dwell on for a long time as well. So there's a lot going on here. Go, you have your hand up.
Yes, go.
Fred, thank you very much for your presentation, your lecture. I much appreciate it. Go from Nairobi, Kenya. Just a quick one. Why is it important that you distinguish African theology from Black theology, and how does that inform our discourse?
I think if you observe African theology, the movement itself, and in the Black theology over time. Now, the black theology evolved as a result of liberation theology that also draws on cultural oppression within the time, which is totally different from Africans' response to Christology, the first, the second, and the third. Now, if you look at the Africans' response to Christology, the first, which was in the 1909s, it was purely distinctive of cultural oppression. And then also, if you look at the second response to Christianity, which was in the 1950s, it was also distinctive of devoid of cultural oppressions. And then even the third response, which we have in that is the 1970s, that's also devoid of cultural oppressions. So these are very thin lines that distinctively separates or distinctively de-identify the African theology from black theology, and also the idea of liberation theology that was going on around that time. And so that is why it is very important that if we're deconstructing our African traditional practices and re-examining these traditional practices to create a theology around it, then we have to be able to distinctively undo that thinking that African theology is almost the same as black theology. I don't know if it makes sense to you.
Gowie, I'll pick up on that one later. I do wrestle with that as well.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and the same, Rosa, I can see your question. Yes, I'll pick up that one. I do a session on African theology and black theology, so that's coming. Fred, thank you so much. This has been really good. I really appreciate you taking the time, and actually, yeah, I never heard of Nogokpo until now.
Yeah, it's a very serious place that we have to go back and then do a bit of thinking. And
yes, and you're right.
I think ethics and morals in a way to deconstruct our African thinking, in a sense.
And we will do that. We will make space for that. I think there's need for a conversation around this topic on a serious, to be done in a serious manner. So let's stop here.
Sure.
And thank you all. If you have questions, we'll pick them up as we go along. Write them down. I'll pick them up next time we meet. But otherwise, thank you, Fred.
Thank you so much, Ravi, and thank you all for coming. And much appreciated for your questions and thinking. Thanks.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you. I'll see you in 2 weeks. God bless. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah.